And I'm going to be here in conversation, as the idiom has it, with Yair Lapid, leader of Yesh, former finance minister and well-known politician striking a new voice in Israeli politics. We have many, many things to discuss. I'm going to make a unilateral decision on the choreography of this session, and we'll take the middle two seats here. Welcome. Great. Well, we have the luxury of 25 minutes, but an enormous number of things that we could cover. I'd like to start actually with the most current, really the most current. The United Nations has just put out the report on the first report on the Operation Protective Edge just earlier today. And while it starts out with this report looking at the action in Gaza with a statement that it is too early to rule out the possibility of war crimes on both sides, it then follows with really sustained criticism of Israel's action. In that, criticism of the actions that led to more than 1,400 Palestinian deaths, and criticism of some of the judgments as it sees it. And I was wondering what your response was to this.
Well, first of all, there was, when the UN report is ambiguous in saying we think that and we should explore more, that means usually that they didn't find enough bad things to say about Israel.
I have to say that is not my impression from having read the first page.
So, you know, it's not as bad as we thought it's going to be. And yet, there is a basic crime here, is the fact that it equalizes. It puts on the same platform a democratic state that was doing everything it could in order to prevent itself from harming the innocent, and a terror organization that was aiming strictly at women and children. And you know, I sat in the Protective Edge operation. I was part of the security cabinet. There were 8 of us. We spent numerous hours discussing how to avoid from unnecessary killings. And I don't think there are many examples in the history of wars in which an army is calling by cellular phones people on the ground on the other side, telling them, listen, we're going to bomb in 2 hours, you have to leave your house, we don't want to hurt you. Or, and I cannot tell you for security reasons, the number of flights that were canceled when the airplanes were on the way, the fighter jets were on the way to target, and then somebody said, we see on satellite photographs that there are civilians on the ground, call them back, and we did. I see, and not to mention things like, you know, building a hospital on the border in order to help the other side. So what the UN is doing, and not for the first time, is claiming that this kind of behavior is equal to a terror organization that was doing its best to kill civilians, including its own. That I didn't see, for what I got a chance to read, I didn't see enough in this report about this fact that they're using their own civilians as human shields. It's interesting to me that the world is not paying enough attention to this, the use of human shields. And my interpretation is we cannot relate to this from a very profound place, to the idea of people using their own children in order to protect themselves from another army. Because, you know, we grew up in this culture in which you defend your children in your cause. And on there you have a group of people who say it's a win-win situation. Either the other army, the Israeli army, will withdraw or will refrain from shooting, or will get a great photo in your mates. And we look at this and say, this is impossible. No one in his right mind will behave this way. This is inhuman. No, it is possible, and this is exactly what they do. And they've been doing it for quite a long time. And the fact that there is a report like this that doesn't take into consideration the difference between Israel and the terror group is beyond annoying. It's beyond belief.
Let's see when everyone's had a greater chance to look at the detail of it. I want to go on to that point, though, about Israel's reputation in the world. And you've been having meetings here, I think earlier today, on the BDS and so on. How worried do you think Israel should be about the BDS? And what do you think is the source of that movement?
Well, I'm quite worried because of the thing we do not know. We don't know where and when is the tipping point. When is this going to become a real threat?
You're saying it's not a real threat?
It is a real threat because it's approaching this tipping point. The thing is, the problem we have with the BDS is the fact that people do not understand the real motives behind it. Because there are three circles to the BDS. The inner circle is Hamas and Islamic Jihad and oil money, worst kind of radical Islam. Financing these NGOs that are surrounding them, these are the groups that came from the Durban conference in 2001 and brought from there. Vicious combination of old school anti-Semites and radical left, European radical left, now goes to American campuses. And then there's a third circle, which is the majority, which are well-intended liberals or progressive people who say, you know what, sounds like a good idea that the Palestinians should have a state of their own. And what they do not know is that they are being manipulated by people who don't want a Palestinian state alongside Israel, which I support. They want a Palestinian state instead of Israel. They want a Palestinian state to be established on the ashes of Israel. So they are being manipulated by the kind of Islam they themselves hate, the kind of gay-killing, women-bashing Islam that everybody hates.
It's really interesting the way you put it, because if you talk to people in Britain who are in their late 50s, 60s, who went to university back then, the default position of many students, and certainly a kind of European left at that point, going back 40 years, was to support Israel. Brave new country, good socialist ideals. People who were not one bit Jewish rushed off to kibbutz. And go 40 years later, and as you're describing it, the kind of reflex that many people on campuses, big parts of the European left, is to take the other side, not Israel's side. Even though, just as you've described it, what they might have in common with the values of an Arab values, Islamic values towards women or rights might be very, very small. But this huge swing. Is that because of things that Israel has done?
I'm not sure, which is, well, actually, no. There are two things. First of all, historically, it's not true. Because if you look at the history of the Palestinian freedom movement, if you can call it this way. So the founder of the Palestinian freedom movement was Hajj Hussein, Jerusalem Mufti. In the 40s, he went to Germany to meet with Hitler to discuss how to solve the Jewish problem, and was introduced to what we call today the final solution. He was so impressed by it, he went with Eichmann to Auschwitz. Spent some time in Auschwitz, came back and wrote a big article saying we have found a solution to the Jewish problem. This is more than 20 years before Israel has won the Six Days War and there was no settlements at the time. So it is not to do with what Israel is doing. It is just hatred to the core idea of a Jewish state. But in a European level or the PR level, there's something else. It's the fact that we have become the stronger side of the equation. In this awful equilibrium of the Middle East, Israel is the strong side. Now, in England, more than in other places, the sympathy for the underdog is such a cultural basic that almost without thinking, the average English person who is at the 50s, as you described, will say, okay, if they are the underdog, we are for them, because this is the Judeo-Christian story. The mighty who is always evil and the weak who is always just. And it's very hard to explain to people that there is another possibility, which is the mighty is always also just. And you know what? The only reason Jewish children or Israeli children didn't die in mass numbers during protected occupation is because we have the kind of equipment and military force that allows us to protect our children. So we are protecting our children. We're being blamed for this because now we are the strong side of the equation and they're to be blamed. So I think this is the reason for this shift or this swing of opinion.
Would you say they're part of the BDS movement? I take your point, not all of it, but part of it saying, look, it is the settlements that are particularly enraging.
I think not, but I want to explain where I come from. I'm not part of this coalition. I'm part of the opposition. I think the only solution is the two-state solution, and this has to do with withdrawing from settlements outside the big blocks. So it's not that I'm supporting settlements and therefore I'm saying no. There is a PR problem with the settlements. I think the settlements and building in more solitary settlements, isolated settlements is a bad idea. And yet, this is not where the movement started. The movement started because the Hamas and Islamic Jihad and the people who are financing them traditionally, which is Iran and some of the Gulf countries, has decided that if they cannot beat Israel in a war, they will beat it in a PR. But unfortunately, they did a very good job in the last 20 years or 15 years.
Do you think that the two-state solution is still possible?
Yes. I think we should approach it from a different angle. I think we had, somebody just counted, we had 11 formal rounds of bilateral talks that failed miserably, and another 3 or 4 that were informal and failed miserably. And this idea of let's put together the Palestinians and the Israelis in the same room and maybe supervise them a little and they will find a solution, doesn't work. And there are various reasons why it doesn't work, but we should approach this differently. We should go to a regional summit and start a regional process that will involve Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states and Jordan, of course. Because some of the issues there are regional. The issue of Gaza has to do with Egypt. The issue of the Jordan Valley has to do with Jordan. All economic issues, which has to do with the rehabilitation of Gaza on one side and the building of a new Palestinian state on the other, has to do with the ability of the Arab world to finance it. And beyond that, this way we can give incentive to the Israelis, saying, you know what, yes, we're giving up on the things we really, really care about, but on the other hand, we are opening markets the size of Europe. We are having a normalization of our relations with the entire Arab world, including states like countries like Indonesia and Malaysia that are out of the equation right now. So there's a big incentive for the Israelis, and it's a more practical way to approach this. And besides, for example, in the core issues like, for example, Jerusalem.
Well, I was going to ask where you were now. I've seen your past comments. Where you are now on the division of Jerusalem.
You know what? There'll be no division of Jerusalem. And people tell me then there'll be no peace. No, there will be peace without the division of Jerusalem. I'll give you an example. Everybody always said that there will be no peace unless there will be some sort of a right of return. And then President Abbas himself sat in an interview in Israel's Channel 2 and said, I have come to realize that I'm not going to go back to my home in Safat, which is in Israel. Why? Because the Palestinians who knows the Israelis very well looked at us up close and realized that there's a full consensus in Israel against the right of return, and no Israeli in his right mind will ever agree to this. And it's okay, so let's go for what we can get. And it's going to be the same with Jerusalem. Then again, I would leave Jerusalem till the end of the negotiation. I wouldn't start there because there's no way to progress.
But you're saying that the Palestinians should not expect to get as they happen.
I'm saying that negotiations were meant for the things that we dispute over, not for the things we agree on. I'm telling you, this this is why we should start. You know what? If mentioning Jerusalem, you cannot speak only with the Palestinians about Jerusalem, because the Saudis and the Jordanians see themselves as the custodians of the holy places, and they've been telling the Palestinians, you cannot discuss this alone. You have to discuss this with us on board.
What can you do to promote your ideas from opposition, where you suddenly find yourself?
Well, first thing you have to do is to go to London and give an interview to you on stage.
I'm delighted to know that
Yes.
London is now
Yes, we're making history as we go on.
Yeah.
We have, listen, it's a long process. I've been pushing this now for a year, and we're doing some progress. You know, you do what you do. I spoke with, I was 10 days ago, I was in Washington, went to the White House to talk to the advisors, the president's advisors about this, talked to several more influential senators, people, you know what, people like Lindsey Graham, who's a candidate for presidency, or Elizabeth Warren, who's been, you know, talked about her as might be, were introduced with the idea, liked it, said, okay, we're going to push forward. You know, you have to be, like in all ideas, when you present a new idea, you have to be persistent and go and meet people and talk to them. I spoke with Fabius in France, I spoke with Steinmeier in Germany. You just go.
What is it that you want them to do?
Right now, I want them to understand that this is what I think is the best idea on the table, not to mention the only idea on the table. And I want them to be supportive and to talk about it while giving interviews. And you know, when you're in opposition, what you do is you put the infrastructure for the next government, because I don't see this government moving into this process. I want to.
We had Sylvan Shalom on a stage this morning saying, the minute the Iran deal is done, 8 days from now, you could see something serious from Israel's government about restarting the peace process. Do you think they're serious?
I hope so. I make a thing out of not attacking the government when I'm abroad, so I'm going to be as cautious as I can.
Interesting idea.
Yes. My thinking is that, first of all, it's not going to be in 8 days. I see no, it's almost improbable to think that, there will be an agreement by June 30. But whenever, listen, Israel is struggling with the idea of, with the French resolution going to the Security Council, with an option of other resolutions going there. Interestingly enough, the Palestinians, so does the Palestinians, because the French resolution concludes recognition of Israel as a Jewish state. So they're not happy with it as well. So something needs to be initiated. If it will be Israel again saying we want to negotiate without something solid and tangible behind it, it will be useless. I hope so, but I'm doubtful.
Let's just stay on the Iran deal for a second. Your skepticism about whether it's done in 8 days is absolutely well placed, I think. But if it is done in line with the deal that is on the table at the moment, what do you think it means for Israel?
Well, a terrible threat. You know, when I was in Washington, I was talking about this, and I said, first of all, you have to understand that we are not only the immediate target. There are only two nations within the UN, in the history of the UN, in which one nation is telling another, your destruction is a formal goal of mine. And this is Iran to Israel. So we are the target, and we are also in range, which makes us anxious and with right cause. And besides, we are not happy nor with the way the negotiations were managed. Because from a very early point, it was very obvious that the Americans put so much into it that they cannot just get out the table. Now you're dealing with the best negotiators in the Middle East, the Persians, which means they're the best negotiators on earth. And they know that America is now so invested into this that they will not get up from the table. So they're going to exploit this till the bone. And besides, we do not seem to get answers on things that are really crucial. Let me pinpoint one thing, which is the inspection.
The verification procedures.
If inspectors in a country like Iran, if inspectors cannot top out from the ground at every given moment, you have to remember none of the military or nuclear facilities of Iran has been dismantled. They're all there. They're all going to stay there. And Pardue, all of them. If the inspectors cannot just pop out from the ground, then this is not an inspection. And the answer that says, but Iran will never agree to this, is not acceptable to anyone who knows what's going on in this facility. If you give them 5 days to hide what they're doing, they will have 5 days to hide what they're doing. They will hide it. They wait for the inspectors to leave, and then they will remanage the problem. So we need to have, if I was to ask one question, every American who's dealing with it, will be this question will be the only question. What about the inspection? How come you cannot have an immediate inspection? The way we have asked you to look for.
And if the answer comes back from Washington, as it seems to have done for the past year, of look, this is not perfect. It's really not perfect as a deal, but it looks like the best we can do.
Well, I think then the administration should answer 2 questions. One is the obvious question, because if we have a scale that says no deal, bad deal, good deal, how do you manage it? Everybody understands good deal is above. And
we don't seem to have, we seem to have bad deal, no deal as a choice.
Then a no deal will be better. Then a no deal will be better, because a bad deal is just taking the best tool we have, which is the sanctions, without giving something in return. And besides, if the Americans have moved from a policy of prevention to a policy of containment, they're supposed to let us know, because this is moving to a policy of containment without saying it out loud. And this means the Iranians will have a functional nuclear program in the near future. So again, I'm opposition. I'm not supposed to support the government, but I'm telling you, there's no coalition opposition in Israel about this. I see Omer sitting here, is from Labour Party. I'm sure he will agree when you ask him.
Would it bring us right back though, to the beginning, though, and negotiations with the Palestinians, and the question of what is the future for Israel if there is no deal? There is no deal with Palestinians for whatever reason. The demographics are.
Does this mean we have to go and there's a fire?
No, I don't think so. Nothing so dramatic as a secret signal for the Brits. If there is no deal for Israel, the demographics, as we know, Arab population increasing, and more and more of the world saying to Israel, look, you've got this awful choice looming if there's no deal between being a state Jewish in character, and between being a democracy. What are you going to do?
Well, the reason I'm sitting here, the reason I left my quite convenient life as working as being you, which is what I did before I went into politics.
That's fast without comment.
Yeah, well, is...
I have an inconvenient life, but anyway, go on.
Okay, you want to talk about it?
Not on stage.
Okay, we get together for lunch. The reason I'm in politics is this. Israel's future depends on its ability to separate from the Palestinians. There's no way for us to absorb 3.5 million Palestinians and stay a Jewish and democratic state. Sooner or later, they're going to come to us and they're going to say one of the following. We realize you're not going to give us a state. Let us vote. 2 options. You say no, you're not a democracy anymore. You say yes, you're not a Jewish state. I'm a Zionist. I believe in the idea of a Jewish state. I believe in the idea of the return of Jews to the heartland. And for me, it is beyond comprehension that we are not on that path right now. And this is where I'm going, and this is where my party is going. And this is where we hope to lead Israel. It needs, the thing about it, it needs the sort of leadership that Israel is lacking right now. And it's not only an Israeli problem, there's the global problem about the ability of leaders to lead, in a word of new media. But this is the kind of leadership Israel needs now. It's going to be as painful as and as dramatic as the establishment of Israel in 94 years. This will, a lot of terrible things are going to happen. It might be the verge of the first Israel civil war or something. But eventually we will prevail, because we will always prevail, and we need to separate from the West.
Thank you. And do you think this coalition will last its term?
And you know what? I'm not a political commentator anymore, and I wasn't that great when I was. But I find it very hard to believe that this coalition will last. I mean, it's too narrow. The coalition is too narrow. It's a 61-59. For Silvan Shalom to come here to be on stage, he called me 2 weeks in advance to ask if I would mind being here together, so we'll have the ability to leave the country. Otherwise, they're grounded because it's such a narrow coalition. I see no way for this to last for a long, long time.
Mr. Lapid, thank you very much indeed.